It is 14 minutes past 11. You're listening to Nihal live on the BBC Asian Network. Were you educated in Pakistan? If so, I would like to hear from you to tell me about your experiences. Do you believe that the Pakistani education system institutionalises discrimination? Therefore, it teaches children from a young age that Sunni Islam is the way forward. It is the only way. And if you are a Christian, if you are a Shia, if you are a Hindu, a Sikh, if you are gay, that you are inferior, that you have no reason to be treated as equal in Pakistan. Do you believe that the Pakistani education system creates division between India and Pakistan by saying that Indians and Pakistanis cannot live together? I would be interested to know, because that is what is said in a new book, The Education System in Pakistan, Discrimination and the Targeting of the Other. And in a bit, I'm going to be speaking to some of the contributors to this particular book. But what was your experience like? If you're someone who's educated in that country, tell me, do you feel that it's unfair to say that it targets these minorities, that in fact the education system in Pakistan is so poor, it in fact targets everybody? And that is why extreme madrasas have been allowed to plug that void, whereby this type of extreme Sunni Islam is taught to young people in Pakistan. Alongside, of course, the Pakistani state's funding of terrorist organisations to attack India. And, of course, its support given by the ISI to the Taliban. Of course, Nawaz Sharif most recently said, after the terrible attacks that took place in Peshawar, that there is no such thing as good Taliban and bad Taliban. It's all bad. Do you believe that the killings in Peshawar, where over 100 school children were murdered by the Pakistani Taliban, do you think that that's a watershed moment and that now Pakistani society will change, that more money will be put into education? Or do you feel that it will soon be forgotten? 81869 on the text, email nihal@bbc.co.uk, or give us a call. 08459 440 445 is the phone number. It is 22 minutes past 11 and you are listening to Nihal live on the BBC Asian Network. Now, a book has been published by the British Pakistani Christian Association looking at the discrimination felt by minority groups when it comes to their education. Since the attempted murder of Malala Yousafzai, the treatment of girls in that sector has become a widely discussed issue. But essays within the book claim there are also a number of other groups who struggle to get a decent schooling. Have you had experience of the education system of Pakistan? If so, how does it compare, if you can indeed compare the two, to the education system here? And do you believe that the Pakistani education system institutionalises discrimination against minorities? In a while, I'll be speaking to Wilson Chowdhry, who is a Pakistani Christian and wrote the book's foreword. But now joining me is Faiz Baluch, a human rights activist who contributed to this book, and Peter Tathell, director of the Peter Tathell Foundation, who's written a chapter about the LGBT, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender community in Pakistan. Good morning and Happy New Year to you both. Good morning. Faiz, I'll start with you. I mean, Baluchistan seems to be a forgotten war, doesn't it?
You're right. Baluchistan, a great region.
So it's bordered by Afghanistan, Iran and Pakistan,
It's
yeah?
divided between Iran, Pakistan and Afghanistan. It was basically divided by the British in 1839.
Been there before, yeah.
That's right. And then basically the bit now is occupied by Pakistan, remained an independent country until 1948. So
where Pakistan, according to Baluchis, illegally annexed it.
That's right, yes. Where right. Pakistan annexed it by force illegally. They came in with tanks, guns, and they arrested the elected members of Baluchistan Assembly at that time. They imprisoned them. And the ruler of Balochistan was forced to sign a so-called agreement with Pakistan. But the Baloch people, generally, they don't accept that because it was a forced agreement.
So how do Baluchis differ from Pakistanis in terms of culture? Now, I know, of course, Pakistanis have Punjabis and Mirpuris and all different types of Pakistanis. But how different are Baluchis?
The Baloch have their own language.
Yeah.
Yes, the Baloch people have their own language. They have their own culture, which is basically their way of clothing, their way of living is not basically similar to what the people live in Punjab, or even similarly in Sindh, they have their own culture. But basically what differs them is their language. The Balochi language is totally different than what the Punjabi language is. And Balochi language is most similar to the Persian and Kurdish languages. And Baloch are basically being prosecuted since Pakistan occupied Balochistan. There has been no day when there was no military operation in Balochistan. Even right now, as I'm speaking to you, Pakistani military have started a huge operation on the 1st January, which is still going on. In these past 3 days, 20 people were killed in Balochistan, and so many were abducted. And they are using gunship helicopters from Pakistan Air Force. They are using ground forces. So they are basically killing the Baloch people and trying to capture the land. And why they want to capture the land is because Balochistan is rich in natural resources. We have a huge coastline. The area where the fighting is going on now, the military operation, there's a huge coastline and there is a port. They are building the deep sea port. So Pakistan basically want to control that port and sell it to foreign investors, like they are trying to sell it to China. Before it was given to Singapore, but now they cancelled the...
So what do the Baluch people share? What do they have in common with Pakistani people, with Sindhis and Punjabis? And
the only thing we have in common, we are all human beings. Other than that, our culture, our language... So
you have nothing? Food, culture, music?
Our everything is... Our music...
You're Sunni Muslims, is that right?
That's right. We are Sunni Muslims, yes.
Right.
But our music, our language, our culture, way of living...
So you'd have more in common as Sunni Muslims with Pakistan than you would have with Iran, for instance, which is a Shia predominantly country, isn't it?
I mean, if you go for the sect, yeah, we are Sunni Muslim, but we basically don't differ with people on the basis of religion. We think all human beings are equal. They all should have the respect, and they all should have the right to practice their religion, whether they are Hindu, Shia, whatever. In Balochistan, we have Shias, they are Hazaras. You have heard about the Hazaras. Yeah. They are being killed again by the Sunni extremists who are supported by Pakistani military and ISI.
And are those Sunni extremists taken from the Baluch people, or are they external Sunnis who are kind of imported in?
Most of them are external. They are basically Lashkar-e-Jhangvi is a group which is based in Punjab.
Which you believe is funded by the Pakistani government? Which we believe is
funded by the Pakistani military and the ISI. They have bases in Balochistan. Of course, they have... too much money, they are spending money, then given the poverty in Balochistan, some local people might join them because of that, because they have no jobs there, people are jobless, unemployment, so maybe some people from the local Baloch even join them. Basically, the army and ISI are trying to radicalize the Baloch. They are pushing the Baloch youth to join these extremist organizations.
How are young Pakistanis taught about the Baluch and Balochistan in schools in Islamabad and in Lahore?
In Islamabad, in Lahore, unfortunately, the young Pakistanis don't even know about Balochistan. There was recently a report by BBC Urdu. They went in Islamabad and asked university students to name a city in Balochistan, or ask them where Balochistan is. Most of the students at university level, they even didn't know where Balochistan is. Then they couldn't name...
Quetta is there, isn't it? Quetta is
the capital, yes. Quetta is the capital of Balochistan. And some of the students named Gwadar. Gwadar is where the deep sea port is, where the port has caught the eyes of international world. China is trying to get hold of that port. The Gulf countries are trying. US is trying. And the Pakistanis know about Gwadar because they bought lands there. They want to be rich at the cost of Baloch people. And Baluch people, local Baluch people in Gwadar are being expelled by the army, and the land is being sold to what we call foreigners, basically.
Stay with us, Faiz, of course. I'd be interested to hear from Baluch listeners, people from the Baluch community who are listening to the BBC Asia Network now, to tell us their understanding of what's going on there in Pakistan. And if you are Pakistani and not from the Baluch community, I would be really interested to know what your understanding is of the issues that face that particular region. In a moment, I'll be speaking to Wilson Chowdhry, but before that, Peter Tathell joins me now, who has been a tireless campaigner for the rights of the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender communities around the world. Peter, what issues do LGBT people face in Pakistan that are perhaps unique to Pakistan?
Well, first, let me say that I campaign on many issues beyond LGBT rights, and I've been a very strong supporter of human rights defenders in Pakistan who are defending religious and ethnic minorities whose persecution. My contribution to this book is a very small, modest one. It does focus particularly on the experience of LGBT Pakistanis. You know, one of the big problems is that, of course, Pakistan enshrines Islam in its constitution and a particular interpretation of Islam. So one aspect of this is that in 1974 the constitution was amended to officially sanction the persecution of Ahmadi Muslims. So it isn't just an Islamic State, it's an Islamic State with a particular bias and prejudice, including against other Muslims who don't conform to its particular hardline interpretation. So leaving the issue of extremism aside, the Pakistani state and constitution itself enshrines extremism within it. For LGBT Pakistanis, they are victims of a law, Article 37 criminalises same-sex relations with a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. Life imprisonment for a consenting relationship between two persons of the same sex. That's a very extreme penalty, and it's one of the most severe anywhere in the world.
Interesting, isn't it, that while the state is this, you mention in your chapter how the Supreme Court has been perhaps an unlikely ally in trying to reset this, to look at equality and issues of equality, hasn't it?
Well, only with regard to transgender people. Right, which, of course, is great, and that's a really positive.
But it's fairly unlikely, isn't it? It's quite interesting. I read that the Supreme Court was interesting, not a place that you would immediately go to.
Well, this is true, but you know there are some very fine, independent-minded judges in Pakistan who have sought to try and apply the law fairly and objectively, and to conform to the constitution of Pakistan. Now, if you look at the Article 25 of the Pakistan Constitution, it states categorically that all citizens have equal rights and are entitled to equal protection. Now, theoretically, that could apply to lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender Pakistanis. So far, it's only been applied in part to transgender Pakistanis, not to those who are lesbian, gay or bisexual. But there is potential there. And, you know, there's the prospect of one day, perhaps not in the near future, but one day, of a legal challenge which would seek to overturn the anti-gay law based on the fact that it is incompatible with Article 25 of the Constitution. The only problem there...
Or they'll wish to remove the ambiguity contained within it to make it more specific.
Well, but the only problem there is another section of the Constitution states that Pakistan is governed by laws which must conform to the principles of Islam. So on Article 25, the Supreme Court of Pakistan could rule that the persecution, and particularly the criminalisation of same-sex relations, was unlawful, but then it would be caught out by, I think it's Article 227 of the Constitution, which states that every law in Pakistan must conform to the principles of Islam as it's interpreted within the Pakistani constitution, which is pretty hard line.
Absolutely right. It's 34 minutes past 11. Wilson Chowdhry joins us now. Happy New Year to you, Wilson.
Happy New Year, Nihal.
And thanks for joining us. We'll come to you in a moment because we've had some callers get in. So please, if you could put your headphones on, gentlemen, that would help you listen to Shanu, who's got in contact with us. Shanu, good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Nihal, and good morning, and Happy New Year to your guests as well, and to all listeners as well.
Thank you very much. Shanu, do you think that there is a discrimination that is inbuilt into Pakistani children because of the education system?
I'm not too sure about Pakistani schools and colleges, but I personally believe that there's some kind of discrimination against religious minorities, and I think the Pakistani government should give all non-Muslim minorities equal rights and respect, and also punish those who commit crime or who hurt or disrespect any religious minorities. I also want to say something quickly about Balochistan and KPK. I'm aware about the history of KPK and Balochistan. I'm myself a Pashtun as well. So loads of my mom's relatives, they live in Peshawar, yeah. And I also know some Pashtuns in Quetta, Balochistan. They also live in Balochistan, and Balochi people, they're very beautiful, very kind, very nice people. And right now the situation in Pakistan is really, really bad. Yeah, because of Taliban, because of terrorism, and loads of other things, and because of discrimination as well. And I also know the minority of Pashtuns in KPK and Balochistan, and also minorities of Baluch. They want freedom from Pakistan, but I also know the vast majority of Pashtuns and vast majority of Baluch. They still love Pakistan. Like, for example, I'm a Pashtun. I also love Pakistan. I also love Afghanistan, but I love Pakistan a bit more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, wait a minute. I want to interrupt you there because I think that's a good point to bring Faiz back in. Faiz,
yeah?
Do you agree with that? Have you come across Baluch people who love Pakistan as well, or do they want nothing to do with Pakistan?
Look, as a country or as a nation, Pakistan people, we don't hate them. We don't hate Pakistan, but we think our country was occupied at gunpoint, and we think, like all other free nations, we should have a right to decide to be free. And especially when our country was occupied at gunpoint, nobody can justify the occupation. Even the speaker right now, she cannot justify the occupation of my country at gunpoint.
Brother, can I, if you don't mind, can I just make a very quick point, yeah?
Sure.
You know, British Empire, I love Britain, I'm proud to be British, yeah? But British Empire, they signed a treaty, when KPK and Balochistan were part of Afghanistan. At that time, British Empire was ruling Hindustan, and they signed a treaty from Pashtuns from Afghanistan, and Pashtun couldn't read English, and it was written in English, so that was a bit dodgy treaty, so Pashtun signed it. Then because of that treaty, KPK and Balochistan became part of Pakistan. It wasn't Pakistan that stole the land of KPK or Balochistan. Do you know what I mean? It became part of Hindustan. KPK and Balochistan became part of Hindustan. And when in 1947, after the creation of Pakistan, KPK and Balochistan became part of Pakistan because loads of Muslims in KPK, Pashtuns and Baluch, they voted to stay with Pakistan. So Pakistan didn't steal any land of KPK or Balochistan. I'm not trying to defend Pakistan. I love Baluch, you know, and I love Pashtuns. I'm myself a Pashtun. But the history is history. We can't change it.
Okay.
And I know there are problems.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but Faiz wants to come back in. Faiz.
I actually wanted to point out that it's very unfortunate that people in Pakistan are taught the wrong history of about Balochistan, and especially what she is now talking about, it is from that basis of the wrong history. Balochistan has never been a part of Hindustan in what is now called India or even Afghanistan. Balochistan was an independent country before the British occupied it in 1839. And when the British occupied it, they divided it into three parts. They gave one part to Iran, one part to northern region to Afghanistan, and then one part went under occupation of Pakistan. The part which is currently occupied by Pakistan remained independent until 1948. And in 1948, what was the reason of occupation? The Pakistani ruler, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, suggested that the Baluch should join Pakistan on the basis of shared religion, like the Pakistanis are Muslim, Baluch are Muslim.
Right.
The Baluch assembly at that time, the Baluch rulers at that time, rejected the idea of saying that why should we join Pakistan on the basis of religion? If you think we join Pakistan because we are Muslim, then all the Muslims around the world should have one state. Why look at the Arabs. So many Arab, their language is same, their religion is same. Everybody has their own country. Kuwait, Bahrain, they are much smaller than Balochistan.
Do you know that Afghanistan is like a child of Iran? You know, we Pashtuns, we used to be Iranian people. Our language was born in east of Iran. You know, we are Afghans by race, but we are Iranian people. 500 years ago, Afghanistan was Iran, and then it was Mirwais Hotaki, a Pashtun king, and he
right, Shana, I'm going to stop you there. I tell you why, is because we can't get bogged down in a A-level history lesson on the region necessarily, because we don't have enough time. Zahid is in Birmingham. Good morning, Zahid. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Nihal, as well. And I just wanted to talk to your guest from Balochistan.
Faiz, yes.
Oh, yeah, Faiz. Actually, I couldn't hear all what he was saying. He's actually, I want to know, because I was born and brought up in Pakistan, in Karachi. So luckily I have Sindhi friends, Balochi friends, so we all have different, and I have Punjabi friends, Saraiki as well, so different region, different languages, different. So why he thinks that Balochistan should be separate, number one, because I don't want history lesson. What I've seen always is that there is a Balochistan assembly as well, there are member of parliament, all the Sardars and stuff.
So essentially, Zahid, I suppose it's very difficult to answer that question without a history lesson, really, because, of course, you're asking the most basic question, why should Balochistan be independent? He's already answered that question, Zahid, by pointing out that before the British came to that region, there was an independent region known as Balochistan. So why shouldn't it just return to how it was? And it was, in fact, the British that carved it up and gave a bit to Afghanistan, a bit in Iran and a bit in Pakistan.
First of all, with regarding independence, I'm a firm believer that any part, any region, if they want independence, there should be a democratic way to do it, not the violence way.
But you have to be allowed to have that, as the people of Kashmir know. You need to be allowed to have a free and open.
Kashmir or the Khalistan movement was going. I always say that just have it's a democratic political way to.
Are they allowed that, Faiz? Has there been a plebiscite that would be able to grant independence?
Well, leaving aside Balochistan, even there is no democracy in entire Pakistan. Balochistan is basically an occupied region. There can't be a democracy. Baloch people have tried to solve that problem democratically. Baloch are democratic, secular people. But the Pakistani army is inflicting violence on Baloch. As I mentioned...
What's your opinion on the Balochistan Liberation Army, the Balochistan Liberation Army? What's your opinion on them?
See, the Baloch Liberation Army is a group which is supported by the local Baloch people, and the Baloch people are saying the Baloch Liberation Army is defending us against the Pakistani army's aggression.
But they've killed journalists, haven't they? Civilians. They're a prescribed terror organisation by the British state.
That's right, they are prescribed.
And the Pakistani state, but that's possibly understand.
Well, by Pakistani, every Baloch who speaks for their right is a terrorist.
Right, but the British government regard the Balochistan Liberation Army as a terrorist state.
Wrong. The British actually, when the BLA was prescribed as a terrorist organisation, they mentioned it with the other three religious outfits. BLA has nothing to do with religion. They are not a religious organisation.
They've been accused of killing journalists.
Yes, there have been accusations against them, but they have not been proved. And if BLA has killed any innocent people, whether they are journalists, we have condemned that, and I still condemn killing of innocent people, either by the army or the Baloch fighters. There is
We need to, unfortunately, we need to move on because otherwise we can't make the whole hour about Baluchistan.
Sure.
Wilson Chowdhry joins us. Wilson, as and Happy New Year to you. As a Christian, the situation in Pakistan, do you believe that what happened in Peshawar in the military school is a watershed, and that now you will see serious change in Pakistan? Therefore, minorities will be more accepted?
Well, I think it was encouraging that the Prime Minister has spoken about taking harsher action against madrasas preaching hatred. Of course, this is only a very small step. I am concerned about this death sentence that's now being reopened. Obviously, the moratorium has now been lifted, because that, in effect, could affect Asia Bibi and other victims that have a death sentence hanging over them. You know, I don't think killing these murderers really serves much purpose. I think we really need to, they need to be apprehended, they need to be arrested, they need to be punished by the full arm of the law. If it is a death sentence, all well and good. But
yeah, go on, sorry. Go on.
But what I feel is we need to get to a grassroots level. Why is there so much hatred in Pakistan? And it does stem back to the education system of Pakistan that demonises, caricatures minorities of all ilks.
But have Christians, since the time of independence, have Christians been persecuted? Or is this a relatively new thing, based on the fact that it's not the Pakistani constitution that's at fault here, it's not the education system, it's the fact that when Americans and British are dropping bombs or drone strikes on killing Pakistani civilians, and it is seen that those two countries are Christian countries, it is no coincidence that Christians are targeted from the back of that.
The blasphemy law of Pakistan was Islamicised in 87. Prior to 87, the laws were introduced by the British. Only 10 victims were applied a blasphemy charge. Since 87, the number has risen to over 1,000. So we know there has been ongoing blasphemy charges laid against Christians.
But has the war on terror made the situation worse for Christians in Pakistan?
For definite, the intolerance towards Christians has increased since the war on terror, but it still did exist. I mean, we need to separate discrimination from persecution. Persecution has increased. The discrimination has always been there. 86% of Christians are sewage workers, domestic servants, or very low-end workers in any field, whether it be nursing or in the education system, janitors and cleaners again. I mean, I think we really need to look at both aspects. It's not just the persecution. The Constitution of Pakistan separates any faith outside of Islam as because of
outside of Sunni Islam.
Outside of Sunnis, well, arguably the Shias are still included within that Islamic constitution, but I would say the Shias' persecution comes as a cultural aspect rather than a constitutional aspect. But no, I think the fact is Islam is the national religion for the country. That needs to be recognised. You cannot become president of the country unless you're over 40, which is ageist, or you have Islam as your natural faith.
I'm not sure you can become the President of the United States of America without being a Christian, though, to be honest.
That's not in their constitution, though. So are we talking about cultural aspects? Or
but just try running to become President of the United States and not being a Christian. I mean, Obama had to go out of his way to prove that he wasn't a Muslim, didn't he?
I agree with you, but even if we removed the constitutional bias within Pakistan's constitution, you're still going to find that a Christian minister will not become president of the country, but at least he has the opportunity of being so. And so I think these small gestures start to allow the acceptance of other people from outside faiths.
And Peter, how far away do you think we are from LGBT equality in Pakistan? In your lifetime? It's a very tough question to answer, but I mean, it's based on whether there are the building blocks being put in place to allow there to be the kind of freedoms that we see here in the West for the LGBT communities.
Well, maybe 20 years ago, you might have had the hope that there would be a greater openness and equality for all Pakistani citizens. But now, with the increasing radicalisation in Pakistan, I think that hope is receding rather than advancing.
But we've seen homosexuality be criminalised in India again, haven't we?
That's right. But
recently,
the Supreme Court overturned a decision by the High Court to decriminalise, so in effect recriminalise same-sex relations. What's interesting about Pakistan is despite the very high levels of homophobia, and in fact the Pew Research Centre in 2013 found that of the 39 countries it surveyed, Pakistan was the most homophobic of all the countries in the world. Google in 2013 nevertheless found that Pakistan led the world in Google searches for she-male sex. It was second in the world for Google searches for men having sex with men. And it was third in the world for searches for gay sex pics. So there was a big, big contradiction.
Read into that what you will.
Yeah, there's a big, big contradiction there between what the official public policy and behaviour is and what's actually happening on the ground. There's a lot of male homosexuality in Pakistan, but there's also a huge amount of homophobia. So there's a real contradiction there, and I can't see it being resolved anytime soon unless, as this book suggests, there was a thoroughgoing reform of the education system in Pakistan to promote more universal liberal values, not just for gay people, but for all Pakistanis, to overcome the ethnic divisions, the religious divisions, and so on. And that, to me, is what this book is really saying. It's the education system that is the key to liberating the people of Pakistan, to create a more inclusive and therefore a more productive and prosperous society. Because when you have a society where there is so much sectarian division on many different grounds, it's very difficult to have a unified, strong nation. That division is the recipe for weakness.
And Wilson, when Pakistan was founded, what was Jinnah's attitude towards education? Because he was a secularist. Wasn't he? I mean, I know it was, but interesting. I mean, okay, he may not have been a secularist as we understand it, but this man by no means was a fully practising, devout Muslim.
When Jinnah spoke at the Lahore Convention, his words were, you are free to go to your churches, mosques, places of worship from other faiths.
A pluralist more than a secular.
Indeed, he openly said that that going to any faith building wouldn't be the business of the state. So he was promoting equality and freedom for people of all faiths in the country. So as a pluralist, it was founded on the right basis. And if you think about the Constitution of Pakistan, that was formed under Sikandar Mirza. When Jinnah was still ruling the country was called the Dominion of Pakistan and had a much fairer constitution. It was the same constitution adopted by India.
But it was a country forged out of religion, wasn't it? So therefore, it is going to be very, very difficult, for instance, to ever see gay marriage being accepted in a country whose very foundation is based on Islam.
You could have said the same about England. Time is a healer, and over a period of time, cultures develop. And
there's a great deal of disquiet in the Christian church about gay marriage, isn't there? Here in the UK.
And I hear where you're coming from, but I mean, I'm not the best placed person to speak on that, but my opinion is that slowly but surely the church is opening the doors to accept gay marriage, and I'm hoping that Christians do recognise that equality is a foundation stone of Christianity. Christ himself never actually spoke out against homosexuality, so it's something I've always held on to, and I feel that gay marriage for me doesn't affect my Christianity, and I just feel that Christians need to recognise that when you look at marriages outside of the Christian faith, they're accepted if it's an Islamic marriage, if it's a Jewish marriage, but these are outside of Christian context too. So why can't Christians accept gay marriage? I personally would stand on the side of Peter Tetra and many other gay people in this country, that a marriage is outside the Christian faith should be permitted simply because it's a bonding between two people that love each other.
So let's look at recommendations contained in this book, because I think we all know the problems. What are the recommendations contained within this book, the practical ways that the Pakistani state can begin to change?
But a primary context is going to be to change the curriculum of Pakistan. The curriculum of Pakistan that demonises, as I said before, and caricatures minorities, that removes any contribution to the development of Pakistan. We also need to work towards ensuring girls are safe when inside the school. Many girls are kidnapped, raped, and then forced into Islamic marriage, travelling to school, or
these
simply
are Christian girls.
Not just Christian girls. It's minority girls are the targeted community simply because they're vulnerable communities, and the legal fraternity and the police authorities
stand by and watch it happen. Yeah.
Of course. So yes, we need protection for these children. We need to remove the mandatory subject of Islamic studies and bring in a broader religious education program that will enable people to understand what brings us together, rather than the myths that are based on ignorance of other faiths.
But why should you not have mandatory teaching of Islam in an Islamic country, which is founded on Islam? Why should you not? Why should you have to run away from that? Surely what you should be teaching is the positives of Islam, the inclusiveness of Islam, the compassion of Islam, rather than not making it mandatory.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but surely we could do that within a broader religious studies education system that does the same for all faiths, bringing people closer together and maybe allowing people to celebrate each other's festivities together, which builds that community cohesion that we want to see.
So how difficult is it to openly celebrate Christmas in Pakistan?
Well, Christians live in Christian communities, so they do openly celebrate Christmas, and most of them are free of hatred during that period, because people, the Muslim communities obviously are celebrating the birth of Jinnah, which is also on the same date. So there's two national holidays. Well, there's a national holiday, so also Christians have benefited from that over the generations. But what I would say is that it is only in Christian communities, and our shops will be decorated, but the lights will be everywhere. So it's hard to say this, but I simply think that yes, it's easy to celebrate Christmas, but you're always worried about the safety of children travelling to church, or yourselves travelling to church. Don't forget, there's been bomb attacks on Christians in churches on Christmas Decembers, and it's a time when Muharram can fall into that time as well, and so there is always a fear of going to church on that day.
Faiz, do you think that you will ever see an independent Baluchistan, or do you believe what you're actually striving for is much the same as the United Kingdom is, whereby there are self-governing territory, but there are central powers based in Islamabad?
Well, the short answer is yes. I would like, and I hope there will be an independent Balochistan, because it was an independent country, and Pakistan is basically an unnatural state which is currently in a chaos and going toward its natural end. But there are some urgent issues which Pakistan need to address, like stop the military operations, release the 18,000 missing Baloch people who are in the custody, 18,000 who are in the custody of Pakistani forces, and pull out the military from Balochistan, and then let the Baloch people to decide their own future. The Baloch people, if they want to, because before one of your speakers were saying the Baloch people love Pakistan, they want to be with Pakistan, but have you asked any Baloch what they want? Because most the Baloch are saying we are occupied, we had our own country, and we want to have our own country.
Islam is bound to evolve over time, you write in this book. What is the evolution you would like to see?
Well, I think all faiths evolve over time, and Wilson is very correct. Look at Britain's history. We once had, extreme religious zealotry in the 17th century in this country, which led to a civil war and other things, or contributed to a civil war. So I think that eventually Pakistan will, like many other countries, arrive at a place where there is greater understanding and respect for people of different faiths and ethnicities and other minority groups. The problem is, how long will it take? And I think that the big fear is that right now it looks like things are going backwards rather than forwards. I mean, the Pakistani military and intelligence services are working, or sections of them are working hand in glove with the Taliban. They actually promote the Taliban. They support the Taliban. Taliban leaders walk around openly in the Baluch capital, Quetta. Why? because the Pakistani military finds them as a useful third force, a proxy force, to suppress the Baluch people. They think that if the Taliban gets greater power in Baluchistan, it will undermine and weaken the nationalist struggle for freedom and independence. And on your point about, in terms of, what's going to happen in Baluchistan, Pakistan has a very simple option. It could allow a genuinely free and fair referendum on whether the Baluch people want to remain part of Pakistan, have greater regional autonomy, or have independence. They won't allow that vote. Why not? That's the way forward. We want a peaceful, negotiated solution, and the way forward is a United Nations supervised referendum on those options. If Pakistan is serious, it should allow that vote to go ahead and accept the result.
Lastly, Cameron has said, I've been educated in Pakistan. I've never been taught any of this. I've had Shias, Sunnis, Wahhabis, Christians in my class. So how can you teach a Shia or a Christian child to hate themselves? In fact, my Christian class fellow used to top the class in Islamic studies subject. I think this person who wrote the book has gone a bit over the top by saying that these things are taught in the schools.
On digital TV, online and on your mobile. This is BBC Asian Network.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in today and discussing this very important issue. And we all, especially, of course, in the aftermath of what happened in Peshawar, hope that Pakistan changes direction and looks towards granting equality to all of its peoples, regardless of their religious faith or indeed their sexual orientation.